Hey everybody, Bryce Koon here with another episode of The Crowded Booth. This is Swarm Talk, your Georgia Tech talk show. We're going to be talking a couple things today. A little bit about can Georgia Tech win without Jeff Sims if he can't go the rest of the season, if he's banged up? What does this team look like? All that and more on today's episode of Swarm Talk presented by The Crowded Booth.
Pile in here and make yourself feel at home. Coming on The Crowded Booth with Bryce Koon.
How you doing, everyone? So fantastic get to see you today, obviously on YouTube if you're listening in on radio, or if you're listening in via podcast. We want to welcome you in to Swarm Talk, the #1 internet show for Georgia Tech athletics. Look, we got a big topic to talk about, and this is going to be the first of two shows this week that I really want to get into regarding where this team is, and this offense is post-Virginia. So let's get a couple news and notes out of the way before that. Obviously, we all saw the debacle that was last Thursday offensively for this Georgia Tech team. The defense played up to par. The defense has looked miles better, no pun intended with the play of LaMiles Brooks, of where they were under the Jeff Collins regime, which is technically still the same regime. He's just not there. But I think that this team, as we know, is only going to be able to go as far as that offense is going to be able to allow them to. The defense can carry you, but no semblance of an offense whatsoever. Obviously, Jeff Sims goes down with injury, does not play the remainder of the game, and we know where it went with Zach Gibson. No doubt, it's all out there. This episode is not to sit there and bash Zach Gibson and what happened, obviously, at the end of the game. You saw in the post-game press conference. It's been well documented on social media. That's not the point of what we're doing here today. The point is to really dig deep and say, can this team win without Jeff Sims? And it's been a question posed in our Discord, and make sure if you haven't joined that, the link's going to be linked down here below in the description. Make sure to join that. Over 200 Georgia Tech fans talking each and every single day, the latest, any sport, every sport, recruiting, ticket exchange, signing day, all of that good stuff. What we have to talk about today is we're going to look at two key stats, and then we're going to talk about kind of where this team is. Offensively, heading into a Florida State game that I think the last line on it was 24.5 points. This is going to be a tough game on the road. Let's talk a little bit more about it. The two key stats, and I've got them right over here. Passing yards per attempt so far in this season. They rank 120th with a little average over 10 yards per pass attempt. You may say, well, what does that mean? It means when they are trying to pass the ball, on average, it's not very explosive. They're near the bottom half in explosive passing plays when they attempt it at just 10 yards per pass attempt. Now, it's a little skewed. Air Force is number 1, but it's because when they do throw the ball, they're having to throw it deep. But nonetheless, the stat that really stands out is scoring offense, and I think that's where we're going to stick to today, and that's the stat that I want to talk about. And I know there's going to be people who say you can't judge the entire offense off of that, but I'll say this. You have to score points to win, and Georgia Tech has not done that. Near the bottom of the barrel, 125th in FBS, in Division I FBS, at 16.1 points per game. Let's talk about the teams that are just below. At 126, it's Temple, 127, New Mexico State, 128, Iowa, 129, Colorado, 130, Colorado State, and then 131, which is the dead last team in the FBS in scoring offense, is at UMass at 131. Now, when we talk about what this team has to do, it's bottom line. They've got to find a way to get points on the board. And we talked about it last week as we previewed the Virginia game. You had to turn 3 into 6. We had seen them the past couple of games do that, settle for field goals against Duke and Pittsburgh, and then specifically in the Duke game, you probably could have blown them out if you could convert some of those touchdowns. But this offense just doesn't have a rhythm. And with Jeff Sims being banged up, and we put it on the board, we put it in Discord, the diagnosis with Jeff Sims is that it's essentially a foot injury that can't get any worse. It's essentially a pain tolerance for Sims. You heard Brent Keefe, you watched the post-game or the midweek presser today, mention the fact of he's day-to-day and a little bit of smirk that he could play But I think that we have to ask a question: is 75% Jeff Sims still better than what you have? And it obviously flows back into the rest of the quarterback depth chart. So let's get a quick review, and I put this in Discord. I'm going to rehash this out right here. With Jeff Sims, you know what you have. You have a quarterback that extremely talented, a gifted young man, one of the best athletes probably on the field that Georgia Tech can put out there. Gifted runner. That's why we didn't see a lot of design runs, because he was coming into the game injured against Virginia. But in this situation, you have to think, what gives us the best option to win? Jeff Sims right now, he's not going to say it. No one else is going to say it. We'll say it here. He's a little gun-shy from the fact that he continues to get hit over and over again. It doesn't allow him to stay in the pocket. It doesn't allow him to be able to progress through his reads at all times, because the amount of times that he has gotten hit. His offensive line has let him down. No one's going to say that. That's fine. We'll say it here. So that's who Jeff Sims is. He's a little skittish in the pocket at times. Probably the best athlete that you're going to have back there. Let's move to Zach Gibson. Gibson is the type of player who is a baller. He's a gamer type of guy, not the most athletically gifted player. But what Gibson can give you is he's got a little bit of a chip on his shoulder type of player. Now, obviously, look, make the jokes about what you want to say. Most people will not get this far into the show to even listen to what I'm saying. They're just going to write down Zach Gibson sucks in the comments, and that's fine. Do what you want. You have that freedom. But with Gibson, he threw some pretty balls. He threw some not so pretty balls. He doesn't have necessarily the athleticism that Jeff Sims has to be able to make moves in and around the pocket and to extend plays based on a pure runner. A guy who's bumped up in the depth chart, and then a guy that was bumped down, sitting here 3 and 4 spots. Let's talk about Tyson Pumachan. Pumachan obviously is a gifted athlete. He's another guy that I think that they see has a lot of raw arm talent. Listen when I say this. A lot of raw arm talent. Not a polished passer. They don't feel like he's at the spot right now where he could come in and step in and make the key throws you have to make at the FBS level throughout ACC play. That's it right there. Zach Pyron. Probably the most gifted passer out of this group. Obviously, coming out of Pinson Valley, was a kid that was highly touted. Georgia Tech loved him. We've also, heard the rumblings of Chris Winkie and Chip Long really loved the moxie, the makeup, the leadership qualities this kid is already exemplifying and showing. He's had a really, really good, 7-8 weeks of practice running the scout team. He gets bumped up. We could see him play. So when you look at the options, this is an offense that scores 16.1 points per game with Jeff Sims in the lineup. Look, quarterback gets a lot of attention, and for big reason. It's the name, the brand. He's on the billboard, and we get all that. But the attachment to Jeff Sims puzzles me a little bit, because if it's about winning football games, you got to put the guy in there that wins you most football games. You can have different arguments. I understand that Jeff Sims, I wonder if this is a word, how skittish he is sometimes because of he's been hit over and over again because of a faulty offensive line. We could stay there, we could hit click, we could go like this, episode's over. The offensive line has to play better no matter who's back there. Jeff Sims, we saw on Thursday, I keep wanting to say Saturday, we saw on Thursday, when you take Sims out of this offense and you put in a guy who's not as agile, who's not as naturally born athletic as Jeff Sims is, they're going to struggle. Not due to play calling, not due to scheming, due to a lack of average play on the offensive line. Yes, Zach Gibson, did not play amazing. He was also sacked 7 times. You can't ask who's ever going to step into that position to do the same thing that Jeff Sims is. If Georgia Tech's going to have success without Jeff Sims, this is not us saying that he's not going to play on Saturday. But if he does not play, if he doesn't play this Saturday, if he doesn't play the rest of the season, whatever a timeline, if there is one, where Jeff Sims does not play, the scheme is going to have to be different. You're going to have to coach Zach Gibson different than you coach Jeff Sims. You're going to have to scheme plays different. You can't go in with a sense of we're going to run a lot of option type of plays. We're going to run a lot of zone option, a lot of zone reads. Zach Gibson has a different skill set than Jeff Sims does. It's Winky and Long's job to get him ready for what they face in Tallahassee on Saturday. So can Georgia Tech feasibly win without Jeff Sims at quarterback? Yeah, they can. They can win. But it's going to take a lot. From what we saw on Thursday, how ill-prepared they were for that situation concerns me. That's what concerns me in the sense. The lack of preparedness from the coaching staff of being able to change some things. And look, I'm not saying you can't change a whole scheme in the sense of the middle of a season. But what you can do is you can have a plan in place, not if, but when someone gets hurt, because you have to prepare like that at the beginning of the season. It should not have shocked them that Zach Gibson might have to take a couple of snaps, might have to play for a half, might have to play for a full game. You should be prepared for that. We have 75 play sheets that we bring up, and we sit here and we go, okay, what do we do with this quarterback? Well, there should be another set that you bring out, that you take for the next guy, especially if it's a different skill set. We need to see that on Saturday. If it is indeed Zach Gibson that gets some run, whether Zach Pyron gets some run, the skill set of those guys is different than what Jeff Sims is. You can't just run quarterback blast left, quarterback blast right. You've got to be able to be creative to put your guy in the best position to succeed. Withstanding, we know the offensive line's not very good. You didn't get a lot of help from separation of the receivers in this game. The running game was non-existent. Georgia Tech can't be one-dimensional. We're going to talk about that on Friday if they want to beat Florida State. But specific for the quarterback position, Georgia Tech can win without Jeff Sims. They've got to have a different plan, and that falls on the coaching staff. If you're Chip Long, you've got to scheme something else when you head into Tallahassee if you know that Jeff Sims can't go. You should have already had that in the cards, in my opinion, to begin with. It's a little bit nearsighted to not have a plan in place when your backup, he's your backup, has to come into a game and you try to run some semblance. They didn't move the ball at all. 41 yards in the second half against Virginia. That's got to change, or this team won't win another game. They will only win 3 games the rest of the year. And they're sitting at 3 right now. Obviously, the game against Virginia, they're sitting at 123rd in the country in scoring offense at 17.6. The margin went up a little bit due to the game on Thursday. But I think you're in a position with Georgia Tech where you don't need Zach Gibson to come in and light up the box score. He doesn't need to throw for 350 and 5 tutties. What you do need is a guy that can just manage the game, be a point guard for the offense as basketball season getting close to starting, be a point guard for the offense and deliver to some of these athletes. Find ways to get these guys involved. Find a way to get the ball to E.J. Jenkins. Find a way to get it to Nate McCollum. Find a way to get it to Leo Blackburn, Malik Rutherford, Malachi Carter, whoever it is out there. You've got to find the ability to get it to him. I think in going back to a specific couple of plays that was mind-boggling to me watching the game, was 3rd and 1, 3rd and 2, throwing fade routes. When you got a 6'7" guy in E.J. Jenkins, or you got a guy in Dylan Leonard who's now healthy, use them. The offense needs to be simplified and needs to tailor more towards who's at quarterback. If we don't see that on Saturday, it's going to concern me. If Zach Gibson's the guy, then he's the guy you have to roll with. If it's Zach Pyron, Tyson Pumachon, you roll them. If it's Jeff Sims, and like we've said throughout the show, it might be Jeff Sims in this sense. But you've got to find a way to scheme and game plan whoever is behind center to give them the best chance for success, regardless of offensive line play. A good offensive coordinator can take some weaknesses and turn them into strengths, even if those are still weaknesses. A good offensive coordinator can take what you don't do well, find a way around it to make it a net positive. Georgia Tech needs that going forward, whoever's at quarterback. This has been an episode of Swarm Talk. My name is Bryce Koon, presented by Section 103, cover Georgia Tech for 24/7 Sports. Make sure to check us out. Hey, look, we know some people aren't going to love it. That's completely okay. It's a lot of fun. It makes it fun to have conversation. Let me know your thoughts below. Can Georgia Tech win without Jeff Sims? Will Jeff Sims see the field on Saturday? We'll know soon enough. We got a preview episode coming out on Friday morning. Make sure to subscribe, hit the notifications bell so you know when it comes out. If you're listening in on podcast, give us a 5-star review. Give us a review of your choice. Let us know. And make sure to join the chat. Join the Discord down below in the link. Make sure to do that. Hey, it's been a lot of fun talking to you. Georgia Tech's got some big things coming up. Can they capitalize on a road trip that would be a big win down in Tallahassee? All that and more. We'll catch you on Friday. Thanks for tuning in.
Pile in here and make yourself feel at home. The crowded booth is coming on. The Crowded Booth with Bryce Koon.